Hey, it's me, Renee. I'm back. And yeah, so today it's a little, let's say fun. Well, it's a interesting video. So this video was came out two things. One, I recently saw that there's been some debates. Sadly, I'm not always up to date with debates in Norway, but there's been some debates in Norwegian papers if kids or teens read books anymore, or if they don't. Some authors, Norwegian authors, have said they don't bother with writing for kids, teens, because the kids won't bother. And yeah, I mean, that's just not true. Yeah, I mean, not as many people read now as they did 200, 300 years ago. But as a lot of people say, 200, 300, 400 years ago, we didn't have movies, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have all these other distractions and stuff. But people still read. And as well, I kind of wanted to do a little video of this theme because Brandon from Brandon's Bookshelves did a little video where he wanted to get some tips on how to get his kids to read or to love to read, and yeah, he wanted tips from the booktube community, and so that's how this um, video came about, or how that's how I got the idea for this video. Now, caveat one, caveat one. I've more or less always loved to read. So some people they love to read now, but for a long time they didn't love to read. So they have kind of like a story that like this teacher made them love reading, or this book, or etc. etc. Well, personally, I would say I think I more or less always loved to read. I have this idea that I didn't learn to read before, like after some of my peers. But I do remember always loving books, like my parents would read aloud to me, and I always loved that. So yeah, I just have always have this memory of always loving to read, even though yeah, even though I wasn't always good at it. Which I mean, everyone has to learn to read at some point of life. They can still enjoy the reading aspect of it. Well, they can still enjoy the whole reading ability. But yeah, so I have never not really known a time when I didn't love to read. At least not a time that I can remember really much. And B, B, two, but I said one, so I should go with caveat number two. I don't have kids of my own, so I can't say like, well, my kids read because blah blah blah, blah, or my kids I do this blah 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 blah. Blah. I can't talk about that. Well, I can't come from that angle of it. But I am a long time a lover of reading, obviously, and also I did do a library and information science degree, bachelor's degree. So, in that study, we learned how you get kids to read and how it's important to get people to read. And yeah, I mean, we had lots of different aspects we learned about. We learned about both cataloging the books, but also about the different categories in books and how to get people to read and author talks and whatnot. We learned about the library every day, more or less. So I do have some knowledge about stuff, but I can't talk about my own kids because they don't exist unless I was kidnapped and someone took my kids. Well, then I had to like my memory of them had to be erased. I suppose real life isn't that soap opera-ish. So yeah. Anyway, yeah. As usual, haven't really planned this video that much out. I have some books I want to talk about, and yeah. I thought maybe I should plan this, but I wanted to film this today, and then I kind of didn't want to plan. And I like to be impulsive. I don't really always like to plan stuff. I think it's fun to kind of be impulsive, and yeah. And if it's something you know, like a topic you know a lot about, you don't really have to plan it, do you? Well, yeah. So I think first, or at least one of my tips is one. Yeah, I'm just going to number them. One, don't be a snob. Often people talk about how, oh, my kid isn't reading, and then as a librarian or as a if for me, I'm working in a bookstore, maybe you talk to a kid and the kid says, well, he likes comics and he likes this and this author. So it turns out the mom means he's not reading the right books, which, yeah, it's stupid and snobbish. I mean, yeah, when you're in high school, you need to read, sometimes you need to read X, Y, and Z book for projects. But when you're between ages of 8 till like 15, I suppose, depending on your school, but for a long time there, at least in my experience in school, you weren't really told you had to read this and this book. It was just more like read. You had time in school to read during class, but there was no one told you you had to read this and this book. So yeah, saying that your kid doesn't read if he if they read the wrong type of books, it's just stupid, because policing what your kid is gonna read. If you just say you can just read this and this, you can't read that and that. I mean, I suppose, yeah, for a while that might work, but if that kid kind of grows out of those books, I kind of want to try something else, but mom or the dad says no, you can't. That's probably gonna just demotivate him. That's gonna make him sad and make him not want to read more. So yeah, that's just that's doing it the wrong way. That's hindering his or her love for reading. Oh no, I say his all the time. I suppose in a way because we have this old idea that boys don't love to read while girls often do. But still, I mean, there's still a lot of boys who do love to read, and there's still a lot of girls who don't. So I suppose it's kind of people of both genders and not those genders can dislike or like to read. So yeah. For now, I'll just say kids or people because yeah, I suppose I kind of think like this video can also be a way of like. I think it's also gonna be. I think it's also, yeah. I'm so impulsive. It's also gonna be, it's geared towards people in general who want to read. So not just teens or kids, but also if you have a brother who's 40 and you want to like, get him to read, watch this video and might get some ideas maybe. But yeah, first and foremost, don't be snobbish. Don't say they have to read these and these books, or it wasn't won't count. And like if your kid likes comic books, if your kid likes nonfiction book, if your kid likes Guinness World Records, that's books that aren't traditionally books, because often when you talk about people loving to read, they often mean fiction. Well, if you like nonfiction, that's perfectly valid as well, and that's also, I was going to say that's also fiction. Non-fiction isn't fiction, that's coming in the name. No, but that's also perfectly fine to read non-fiction. I mean, that's up to you. I mean, many of the benefits you get from reading, you get from non-fiction as well. And yeah, just saying that you have to read this and this and this, it's just stupid. And saying that you don't love reading if you don't love X, Y, and Z authors or genres. Yeah, that's not cool. Policing like that's not cool. And yeah, and like often, as I tried to start to say earlier, often people say like, "Oh, boys don't love to read," and then they talk to the boy, and the boy talk about how the boy he loves Spider Man, he loves Donald Duck, etc., etc. And I'm like thinking, well, that is words. Yeah, comics has a lot of pictures, but there's still words there, so it still counts as reading. So looking down on people who like to read comic books or books with a lot of pictures or non-fiction books, yeah, that's not cool, dude. Not cool. So yeah, if it turns out that your kid or the person you want to get to read might really enjoy comics, let them enjoy comics. Some people, after a while, they start to kind of go outside of the comfort zone and try different books. They might start to read crime, fantasy, what have you, or they might always stay in the comic book lane, and that's up to them to say that you have to read this and this book, what kinds of books. Yeah, that's not cool, not fun. at all. So yeah, you stop being snobbish. I mean, at least in my head, the main idea of, like, if you want to get people to read, don't don't police them and then say you have to read this and this and this. The main point is to get them to have a love or have a desire to read. And also, they don't have to love it, but like at least a desire that, like, that they enjoy reading. And if they enjoy nonfiction or comic books, let them be. Yes, you might not enjoy those two things, but that is still valid. So don't worry about them reading the right books. That's no, not cool. Not cool. And point number two. This is kind of going more towards the adults out there, but I suppose could also go to kids. But yeah, I often find that people have this idea that books, it's just, oh no, books is just some heavy thing. Maybe they don't come from a family that loves to read, so they only associate books with have Shakespeare, or they associate with Good Great Gatsby and classics, and not that classics don't have value and isn't good, but often classics isn't really a good place to start with books. And like also a lot of them are, like, for example, uh if you say, for example, if you take the uh Dante's Inferno, yeah, no, Dante's comedy, Infernal Comedy, yeah, you know that big epic. Yeah, I don't really think that's a place to start if you haven't read anything before, because it's like 2 million pages and just so many poems and stuff, and yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult place to start. So I mean, you have to know where to start with stuff as well. But yeah, often people, like, if people don't normally love to read, and then they talk about, oh, you like to read? Why do you like to read? And like, books are so boring. Books are stupid. And I'm just kind of thinking, yeah, okay. So you're saying a whole medium is stupid, and also, like, I mean, quite a lot of the things in all of the movies and TV series are based on books. Harry Potter, Narnia, you have Twilight. These stuff started as books. So you think all the people who read those books were stupid because they read books? Yeah, I don't know. And I just kind of have this idea that, like, people saying that books are stupid, honestly, I think you sadly just met the wrong people, and you haven't encountered the right encounter. Sound weird. You haven't found the right book yet. There's a cliche saying. I'm not sure if it's just Norwegian or if it's like international saying, but at least we have a saying where we say, "There's a book for everyone," and I sincerely mean that. I sincerely believe that there's one book for everyone. Yes, at this point in time, the planet consists of billions of people, tens of billions. I'm not sure how many people there are in the planet at this point in time, but I think there's around billions. I mean, you have quite a few many cities where it's just millions of people living. So yeah, you have billions of people on the earth. But still, you have people have written stories and told stories. Well, people have told stories since the start of time, really, more or less. But like we've written books since, well, we have that for a long time again. Okay, since the printing press in Europe in the 1400s, Gutenberg, there's been published so many stories that to say that reading is boring, yeah, honestly, I no, that's just not true. I mean, if there's not one book in the whole entire world that's not for you, I don't believe that. Maybe that one book, I suppose maybe you could be lucky in that one book that interests you is in ancient Greece, or maybe it just exists in one copy or what have you. But then again, no. The most books nowadays also, I love the book, not all of them, but a lot of them exist in the original language, but also in English. A lot of books are translated to that. And also, yeah, just having one book for you. No, there's probably, honestly, I think there's probably like 10, 5 books for every person. So yeah, this idea that books are boring is just so stupid. I mean, to just give you a little example, Squirrel Girl. It's a comic book, but yeah, it's still a book. In my head, comic books still books. This is about Squirrel Girl. It's not quite clear how it works, but she's a squirrel. She's a squirrel and a girl. She has a squirrel tail, and she can communicate with squirrels. So I mean, she's a superhero. Uh, but she's not a mutant, so we don't really know mechanics behind it, how it happened. But we just know that's how it's always been. And yeah, just the fact that someone came up with the idea to make a superhero a squirrel girl. I mean, that's so out there, so outlandish, but it's just done so cool. And I mean, it's so original, but still it's done so well. I mean, would you say this is boring? I would say maybe. I suppose you could maybe say it's boring, but I don't know. I suppose you should answer like, okay, how to like define boring and not boring, because people say books are boring. I suppose this might be boring to some people, but I wouldn't. Often I think of upside of boring being uninteresting or unoriginal, and this you can't say it's unoriginal. It's quite wacky and out there. So, like on a general scale, I can't really say this is boring. Like I think most people think this is uninteresting, at least in a general sense of it. So yeah, I mean, this book in the world, books boring? No. Then you have books like this, where it's just kind of quotes from bookstores. Jen Campbell, she collected them, and she started with having her own bookstore, having all quotes. But then she got people from around the world to give her anecdotes and quotes for stuff that's happening around in bookstores. So like, could be dialogues, could be other stuff. And yeah, so this it's not a big book. It's not fiction. It's non-fiction, but it's still a book. And it's quite funny. And I suppose some of the stuff in this might have to know some literature to know why it's weird, but like a lot of it is also like, oh my god, why is he going into a bookstore asking if you have a cake? Because bookstores don't usually sell cake. Some of them have bookstores and cafes, but they often have two different checkouts. So yeah, this book, if you want, like, if you have this idea that all books are long and boring and uninteresting, yeah, a thin book, very funny book, at least some parts of it, and also short, so you can, well, short and there's pictures in it, so you don't really have to read all at the same go. Yeah, this again, I suppose. Well, I suppose the idea of taking quotes from where a place where you live isn't that original, because people say weird things. But maybe like quotes from bookstores, you might think like, okay, that's a kind of fun idea. And I don't think this did that many books of it. I would say actually a way of saying if something is original or not is to think how many books of this theme, of this message, is out there. Don't think there's that many of this out there. So, yeah, this book. Is it boring? No, can't say it is. Then we have 50 Queers Who Save the World. I got a non-fiction, but non-fiction perfectly valuable. Valuable. Uh, perfectly, I don't know a word. Perfectly fine to read that. So here you have kind of a picture and then biography. So I suppose it's kind of long because it's one long page, but in the grand scheme of things, one page is not that big. And yeah, so like if your neighbor, friend, kid, whatever is interested in history, there's lots of books like this, kind of in the same style as Goodnight Stories from Rebel Girls, where you have a biography on one page, and then the other page you have a picture. You get some insight into real life people, and you read. So that's, I mean, reading comprehension. And yeah, you don't need to read fiction to be a reader. This is fine as well. Also, yeah, people often say like, okay, people have this idea that no, books are boring, or I don't have time to read. All the books are so long. Both these books are not that long. So yeah, there's quite many books out there that are not that long. So saying that there's just long books out there, not true. Then we have Old Magic by Marion Crowley, urban fantasy. So you wouldn't really have to get into a mm, whole different way of thinking because of high fantasy. You have to learn a whole new world. This is our world with some magic here and there, and yeah, covers kind of old stylish, kind of 2000, so it's a 90s style. But yeah, this one, it has love, it has family issues and uh, school issues, but also there's a curse, and it's very well written, easily written. Often people maybe after learn to read and they find like a lot of books are hard to read. Well, this, it's very accessible, very easily read. There's no long weird words or weird use of words or long phrases or what have you. It's very, yeah, you can read it very fast. It's very fast paced and yeah, easily read. Accessible, that's what I'm thinking of. Accessible. It's very accessible book. Then you have invisibility. People saying that no, all the books are so highbrow and difficult. This is kind of interesting because it's kind of a mix. It's both light but also highbrow in ways because some say it's a bit weird to recommend a new book that's highbrow when I want to show that books aren't just highbrow. Yeah, what I mean here is that there's this book is urban fantasy, so it has some urban fantasy elements to it. There's romance, friends, what have you, all the usual elements. But there's also some philosophy in it here and there. But it sneaks into it. It's kind of sneaks in there. So it's just like it doesn't. It's not heavily on a philosophy, but it's there and it's kind of sneaks up on you. So when you finish the book, it's like, oh my god, that book was so delightful, but also made me think. But it still wasn't difficult to understand. Books doesn't have to be difficult to make you think. Invisibility by Andrew Kramer and David Leviathan. Then we have Lingo by Gaston Doren. So this is a nonfiction read. As I said, again, nonfiction, perfectly valuable to read that. This consists of small chapters slash essays, most of them around like 4 pages, and it's about different languages. This is about different languages in Europe, but this guy, he also has a book about languages around the world. And yeah, so if you like languages, if you like to learn stuff, maybe you don't have time to read a long book, or yeah, you pick up this one because I mean, if you don't have time to read 3 pages, I honestly I wouldn't believe you. Everyone has time to read 3 pages. As I said, some of these chapters are just 3 pages long, and they're informative, delightful, also quite fun here and there, funny here and there with some funny insights, and yeah, this is quite enjoyable and good. And I would recommend it for people 16 and up, really. You don't really have to read as an adult, you could easily read it as a teen. Then the Irisha series. So this is a middle grade series, but also if you want to start reading books when you're in your 20s but you haven't read that many books before, you could easily start with a middle grade book because they're written for middle grades age, so they're easier to read, but they're still very enjoyable and very entertaining. People often have this idea that you have to read for the age you are in. Myself, I'm turning 30 in so I was about to say a few weeks. In a few months, I still read middle grade. I still read YA. I honestly, with me, I read books that I find they like if I find either the plot or the author enjoyable, I'll pick them up. I don't really care if it's middle grade or YA or adults. For me, the main thing is the plot and the author. Like if a book sounds interesting to me because of X, Y, and Z, I'll pick it up. I won't think like I'll only read books with 20-ish year olds. No, like I could I could miss out so many books if I just think like I'm only gonna read books meant for me. So yeah, and yeah, this book series, it's middle grade, fast pace. It has chapter titles, which are always fun. At least I think so. And quick chapters. So if you know how to read but you want to read something easily read, accessible, check out this series. So fast paced, so many characters, so great world building, Indian mythology, very funny and fun. And yeah, I mean, again, yeah, books are boring. Um, Indian mythology, where you have um talking parrots and whatnot, or whatnot. You might say it's unrealistic, but you can't say it's boring. Uh, You can't claim this is boring. I won't allow it. Sorry, this is a bit cheating in a way. But this is a Norwegian book. Came out 2 years ago now? 1 year ago? 1 year ago? Around that. Yeah, kind of fun actually. This book, so you see, it's not long at all. It's just 170 pages. And, sorry, a lot of it, yeah, I suppose it's kind of longish here and there, but this shorter paragraphs here and there. And there's a lot of dialogue. But the quite funny thing is that actually the author this is a this is his debut book, and so the author actually wrote the whole book, or at least the first draft, on his cell phone. So quite fun. And this book uses dialect in it, and yeah, but it's told in first person perspective, and it's a story of one summer, and it's very much like he went there, talked to them, went there, talked to them, did this. It's very, I mean, in a way, yeah, not a lot happens in the book, but enough happened that's interesting. And yeah, books like this, it's not a huge book, but it's still a book that packs a punch in some interesting different ways. It also has to be first generation Norwegian, and yeah, again, a book that's not that long. There's quite that many books out there in the world which aren't 1,500 pages. So saying all books are so long, that's just not true. Not true at all. Then we have is for losers, which is one of these. Moment. Yeah, it's what's the word again? I think there's a word for it. Can't remember. Okay. Anyway, it's one of these diary form books, so it's written in diary form. So it's Monday, the 1st of November. This and this and this happened. I suppose slightly on the Bridget Jones, Bridget Jones tradition, or Prince Diaries, kind of the same thing. So, and often not a lot happens in one day. So sometimes a chapter, because there's no chapters. There's just like day this, day that, day this, day that. So one day might be like one paragraph, and then the next might be two paragraphs. But still, in the way it's written, it's just so you just open it and then suddenly finish the book, because yeah, it's just so fast paced. But also this book, it's just also so fun. I would say, yeah, as that I don't really plan stuff. I would say kind of in general, when you're getting people to read, find out what they enjoy. Like, do they enjoy history? Do they enjoy nonfiction? Do they enjoy magic, humor? Because in all the different age groups, not just for teens or kids, but all different age groups, you have all the different books, as I can't been telling you. But yeah, you have so many different books in the world. There's bound to be at least one book for you, and you just have to find the right book. Like if you're interested to laugh while you're reading. Some of my friends love to read. When they read, they want to learn stuff, and then when they watch movies, they want to laugh. So some people have different ideas what they want when they're reading. So like to kind of first talk to them about like, but what do you want when you read? I suppose maybe they don't know that, but if they have an idea of what they want to do, like if they want to read about different worlds, if they want to read about history or fiction, non-fiction, what have you, it's a good place to start to talk about talk to the person. But yeah, this is very funny, and yeah, as I kind of wanted to get out there, humor is a great way to get people to read, or yeah, to get people to get people to read. Humor and also action. I think that's kind of the two main things, like funny, interesting characters, but also fast-paced dialogue and plot. I would say also very important. Usually, at least, of course, usually, not always, but usually. And also humor. Yeah, like a lot of the books that are on bestseller list for kids are very funny books. Like often when you getting kids to read, humor is important. Humor will often work. And yeah, so this book for teens or older kids, adults, teens out. This is a very funny book. Check it out. And then we have a Rook of One's Own, which is a historical romance, historical read as well. I love this cover, and yeah, it's just written very fast-paced and good. It have yeah, I mean, it tells about a real story. It tells about the story of the suffragettes, but it's also about fictional people just living in that time. So it sneaks in some suffragette facts while you read a lovely romance. And yeah, also for the some people say like, well, thoroughly, I've said this before, but yeah, other people say like books that are just so heavy and long and not interesting. But then they might also say like, well, a book will take me so long to read. Okay, but didn't you just use like 10 hours last Saturday to watch a season of a TV series? I mean, is that anything better than a book? I mean, if you have time to binge watch one or two seasons of television, you have time to read one or two books. But yeah, often yeah, people also say like, ah, books they're so difficult and uninteresting and blah blah blah. Maybe you're not. Maybe you don't want to read fantasy. Maybe you don't want to read some non-fiction book or some heavy-hitting book. But there's still lots of romance reads out there. I think people still kind of think that romance reads they're kind of just Harlequin books, but I mean, romance. It's such a long. It's such a big genre that you have so much of it, and I mean, you have romance like this. You have romance like Evie Bram by Tyler Hibbert, by Lisa Cole. I mean, there's so much different romance out there. Uh, yeah, I know. In general, like saying that you don't like to read it's just a cop out. I think you kind of don't want to read because honestly, saying that there's not one book out there, yeah, I don't think that's true, not at all. And yeah, maybe you want to read, but you don't really know where to start, or you want to get some help to know where to start with your friend or kid or what have you. Talk to a librarian. Talk to people at bookstores. They have information. They have ideas of where to start. There's also lots of articles about this out there. I suppose, yeah, doing a video on something and then saying, go to see, watch over there. But like, I'm not the end all and be all on this. Other people than me talk about this and know about this stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's a book for everyone. But also, yeah, I haven't planned this video that much. But kind of as a last idea thought, I kind of, with me, as I said, well, a little anecdotal. Let's have some story time. So yeah, with me, I've kind of always loved to read, always been a big reader. Uh, well, like, this last few, yeah, this last 10 years, there's been a competition in the library in primary schools, but they can get prizes for reading so and so many pages. But this is during the summer. We didn't have that when I went to school. In my day, when I was young, not that old now. But yeah, but we still had kind of similar things where, like, if you'd finished 100 pages over the weekend, you'd get a note where it said, Sarah read 100 pages. Yoo-hoo, she'll get a silver clap, or like, I think there was like silver medal or something. But anyway, you like, it was a note posted in the classroom, so you could like see people reading many pages. And I suppose also I was privileged the library. Well, that too. The primary school where I went was actually the biggest one in the area. I didn't know that before I finished it, but yeah, it was the biggest one in the area. And we had a huge school library. We went there every week, and we always got books, and we always like through all of primary school, we had time in school to read, and we also we focused on reading. And sometimes we would read and then we get assignments or draw something from when you're reading. And that, I think, for me, I always loved reading, but to to kind of begin a task to do something with the reading, but like not saying like you have to remember what person A said on page 2. Not quizzing, because that's too exam-ish, but like, yeah, if you're getting task of like drawing a new cover from the book because you feel like this cover could be better, or write your own chapter 2 after you read chapter 1. So like stuff like that. I think that kind of can be a fun way to kind of engage and get people more involved in reading. Like if they're on the fence, like much more interest, I'm thinking. But yeah, and I also, a lot of people in my primary school, we all of us read, like a lot of us were big readers, and all of us would actually read Nancy Drew books. I suppose I'm a bit young for that, because I mean Nancy Drew started the craze was like 50 years ago, 60 years ago. But yeah, we also really like Nancy Drew books. We read a lot of those. And I suppose also like if you're a kid and you like to read, there's so many series with so many books. Nancy Drew, Sweet Valley High, Babysitter Sisters Club, Babysitter Club. So many of them have so many books in the series that, I mean, if you just enjoy series, you can just read them all, and there's kind of all these books to look forward to, and yeah. And I suppose still, I mean, today you still have a lot of the big best-selling books for teens or kids are series. And I suppose it's kind of like the idea behind it, that they have a loyal. I mean, they can, if they like the first book, they can like more, and then like then the moms always know that, okay, the kids will always at least read that one book a year because they love that one book that comes out in the series. And maybe after a while they're like, this book is taking so long. Okay, maybe a librarian, do you have books similar to this? And they might read similar books and what have you. But yeah, so I kind of think also like, yeah, kind of making reading something social. So like often people, oh yeah, also people say often like, reading, that's nothing, no one does and that anymore. Like, have you seen the bestseller? I mean, yeah, not all the bestseller list books are read by teens. Some of them are read by adults who read teen books, but still, a lot of bestselling reads lately are teen reads and Percy Jackson. So I mean, books are still very much an important thing, and very much in focus. But yeah, what was I about to say? I was about to say that, yeah. So like, kind of have this idea, like if you like football, you go outside and you have a ball on your arm and you have your football equipment and you walk to the football stadium, and then you play football with friends. If you play an instrument, you have an instrument, you go to a place, you play an instrument. If you like to read, I mean, you can read anywhere. So I suppose, I think that might be why people think we don't read as much as before, because reading, it's not that flashy. Like, yes, you can have Goodreads, you can have Storygraph, BookTube, but not everyone does that. A lot of people just simply read. Maybe they're reading every day in bed before they go to sleep. Maybe they read on audiobooks on the way to jobs or school. But that's still reading. That's still, but it doesn't show off like, I'm reading. They're just kind of doing it naturally. But yeah, so like, maybe thinking maybe if you want to get people to read, maybe make a book club of some sort. Can be fun to can talk about the books or just books in general. That could also be a fun way of doing it. It was there are a lot of things like this already online, but I think having book clubs and having meeting places for people who love to read or people who want to talk about books outside the internet, I think that could be important and valuable and good. And now I've been babbling for 40 minutes. Sorry. Yeah. Hopefully, some of this has been interesting and not that stupid as I kind of was afraid of. I don't think it's that stupid. But yeah, talk to me in the comments. Talk to me about the first book that you loved as a kid or loved whenever, or if you do have a tips for getting people to love to read, or if you just have a thing you want to say. That's nice and relevant. And bye.